Well, Arkansas ended its fiscal year on June 30th with a $945 million surplus. That does not include about $600 million in a long-term reserve fund and some other monies tucked away for future purposes. Lawmakers will decide how to spend that surplus later this year. We check in with UA economist Mervin Jebaraj for his thoughts. Mervin, first question, tax cuts for the top income earners is a high priority for the governor and many legislators. They want to make Arkansas more competitive with surrounding states by bringing our top tax rate down. Is that good policy and politics?
Well, I think the politics of tax cuts are always good in most instances, but when it comes down to policy, you got to understand that the surplus, the large surplus that the state budget is going to have, and I think it's going to be replicated again through county governments and city governments as well, is really just a one-time windfall, given that the various bills passed by Congress in Washington, D.C. have allocated tons of money to states, and is meant to be a one-time boost in spending for those states to mitigate for the loss in spending last year. Now, some states like Arkansas did okay last year in overall tax collections, especially sales tax collections, because again, the amount of stimulus coming into the state, either through personal checks or unemployment benefits, was fairly sizable enough that people spent that money and the state was able to collect those sales tax collections. So because of that, we have a large surplus, so that's not likely to stick around for very long. In a policy perspective, it's very hard for me to make a convincing case that we should use one-time money to pay for long-term tax cuts. And again, if I were to just choose from a menu of items, I think there are a long menu of items that the state could spend money on. And it's not convincing to me, and it's certainly not the wide body of research to argue that tax cuts move people. I think in general, first of all, people don't move between states in general. And then the few people that do move for jobs. So there's really a whole list of other things that the state could improve on to attract more people to Arkansas, to attract more businesses to Arkansas. And again, tax cuts is just not at the top of the list for those businesses and for those people.
Well, where could you see putting some of that $945 million that would have some additional investment benefits for payoffs down the road, such as, broadband or the earned income tax credit or somewhere else?
Yeah, I think these are all areas where we could get some long-term benefits from. I think we've looked at a variety of different plans through the state. The state has various economic development plans that have been underfunded and underinvested in over decades. And so this would be an opportunity to use such a sizable one-time allocation of money from the federal government to invest in those priorities. I mean, we look at, you want to grow businesses in Arkansas, you want to grow our workforce in Arkansas. We're ranked 48th in the number of people with college degrees, and that has held us back in attracting businesses because businesses want an educated workforce. We don't have nearly as many STEM workers in Arkansas. Again, that could be used to invest in our four-year universities and colleges across the state of Arkansas to build a greater pipeline of those workers so we can attract businesses in those fields. The AEDC has a plan, a science and technology plan, again, that could use more investment. We could have a evergreen fund that attracts businesses, entrepreneurs that are based in Arkansas as opposed to just investing based on risk profile. We could attract businesses and entrepreneurs who will be based in Arkansas. We could put more resources towards mentoring women entrepreneurs and minority entrepreneurs. So there's a long list of strategic initiatives that the state has had various plans sitting on shelves. It's time to take those plans off the shelves, dust them off, sort of update them to where we are in 2021 and invest in those plans. Because there are a lot of good ideas already that the state has had various groups present to them. It's just a matter those ideas haven't been implemented because of lack of funds. Here is a large pool of money. This is what we should do with it.
Lastly, the latest jobs report for May has some good news in it. 61,000 more jobs than a year ago. The metro areas account for about 80% of that. All 8 metropolitan areas posting job gains, with Northwest Arkansas jobs up 9%. Has the economy recovered, or is there still a threat that it will slow down again, mainly due to this Delta variant of COVID-19?
I think if you're simply looking at the employment reports, it looks like the economy is on the path forward. I think with, again, the amount of stimulus money that has been spent on individuals, on businesses, on governments, I think we're looking at getting closer to full employment sometime next year, or, sometime next year. So, I am reluctant to, given the volatile situation here, I'm very reluctant to look at just 1 month's worth of data. So, looking at 3-month averages over this next few months or over the course of the year might be a better exercise. And, if you're looking at 3-month averages, we added 3,400 jobs in March, lost about 1,200 in April, added another 3,400 in May. So on average, we're doing about 1,800 jobs. Is that as good as some of the best job growth that we've seen in the state? No, but it's certainly better than what we were seeing, for example, at the end of 2019, when the 3-month average in payroll growth was not nearly as high as it is today. That said, we still have thousands of jobs that haven't come back that were there in February of 2020, so we have a ways to go. And like I said, we don't expect those jobs to come back until some point next year. Now, the big caveat to all of this job growth is that, the biggest job growth has been in the leisure and hospitality sector. This is true nationally as well as here in Arkansas. This is a sector that we expect to see a lot of growth in over the summer. And so something like the Delta variant could be a concern because, again, we do not have enough people vaccinated in our state. Some counties are closer to 50% vaccination rates. The statewide, again, is much, much lower than that. And if the Delta variant does pick up, and we've seen some high case numbers in this past week, if that becomes a concern, then you start having people going to businesses and restaurants and bars less frequently, which then causes those businesses to pull back on some of the hiring that they've done, and we could end up with a much slower growth than we would if we weren't dealing with as high case numbers. So it's, again, essential for our businesses, for people's employment and long-term prospects, that we get more people in the state vaccinated.
He's Mervin Jebaraj, economist with the University of Arkansas Walton College of Business. Thanks.